Hello.
Hi.
Hello. And I think, Cynthia, we have the whole room with us together, even though we don't see them. But it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a pleasure to meet you all, guys, in the room. My name is Solomia Borshosh. I'm the executive director of the Ukrainian Institute. We, as well as Cynthia, work in the cultural and public diplomacy sphere. It's my pleasure actually to introduce Cynthia Nichols to you, Dr. Cynthia Nichols. She's a regional public engagement specialist in the U.S. Embassy in Kyiv. Actually, Cynthia is going to present to us how she sees the public diplomacy of the U.S., of the public diplomacy of the current times, which is very important, I think, and very interesting for us. I've learned a little bit about Cynthia, and I'll share it with you. Cynthia is actually a very engaging person. She was born in Oklahoma, right? But you lived in Alabama, and I know that she would kill for a buffalo sauce. Is that right? Or no, you will be her friend until the death if you get her a buffalo sauce. That's what I learned about Cynthia.
Fun for life.
Yeah, exactly. That's, I think it actually shows a lot how interesting the person is, and also how engaging as a specialist of public engagement she is. So it's my pleasure to give you a floor, Cynthia, for the next 25-30 minutes to provide your presentation, how you see the public diplomacy in the current times. And after you finish, I'll ask you a few questions, but also we'll give the floor to our colleagues, our guests. Maybe they will ask us some questions.
Sounds good to me. And I appreciate you guys having me here. And it's always an honor. I love serving in Ukraine, and it's always an absolute honor to be able to share our cultures with other people. I want to say that supporting U.S. foreign policy and supporting Ukraine has been very special to my heart, and I know that the U.S. will continue to do so as we continue to support Ukraine over the next few years and transitions as things unfold. I believe there is a presentation that we are going to put together with it. So let me talk to you about a little bit about myself and my background, and we can talk about how democracy works. So next slide, please. So today I'm going to talk about a few things, just tell you a little bit about my culture, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit from a theoretical perspective. I used to be a college professor, so I'm going to pull in a little theory about how culture and countries work together. And then I'm going to talk to you about how, from a foreign policy perspective, how we are using culture as the United States to build stronger relationships between countries. So let me first tell you a little bit about myself and my culture. I am Cynthia Nichols, as introduced. I am from the state of Oklahoma. The state of Oklahoma is a unique state. It is in the middle of the United States. It looks like a pot or a pan. If you kind of hold out your hand like this, it's kind of the state of Oklahoma. That's what you can look like when you find it on a map. And if you go to the next slide, you can kind of see some of the things that makes Oklahoma unique. Well, that's me. I make Oklahoma unique, but that's what I need right there. We have very unique weather in Oklahoma. So some of the things that you can think about when you think about Oklahoma are tornadoes. We're known for tornadoes. You can see a radar image here of not the tornado in the picture, because that's just the best picture I could find. But one of the things that we are known for is our weather and how strong our tornadoes. Another thing about Oklahoma, where I'm from, if you go to the next slide, you can see where I used to teach. As mentioned, I was a college professor. Previously, I taught at Oklahoma State University, where I taught advertising and public relations. And I did all sorts of fun things with college students. I really loved engaging with people and working with them to help them figure out who they are, where they're going to be, and what they're going to do next. I think it's really important for us all to not just be who we are now, but to think about who we're going to be in the future. And so I got to do that with college students. And hopefully today with you, I'll be able to do that as well. Next slide, please. This right here is a picture of Oklahoma City. Oklahoma City is the capital of Oklahoma. It's very flat, and honestly, Oklahoma looks a lot like Ukraine in some places. There are some major cities, and some of the areas are very flat, and the sky is very blue. And if you're driving, I would go on. It would take me about an hour drive to get to work, and it was all on the highway, and you could see wheat on the bottom and blue sky on the top, and it looked like the Ukrainian flag. So it was always kind of nice to be on a train ride to a city in Ukraine and see the yellow fields and the blue skies. It was just utterly beautiful and reminded me of home. So I always enjoy being in Ukraine because it has that nice connection to Oklahoma in my heart. Next slide, please. And then, of course, another part of Oklahoma City that I love is the Thunder. That's our basketball team. And I really, really enjoy going to Thunder games. It's been a few years since I've been to one, but that's all part of our culture. So if you go to the next slide, this slide is all about where I pull in my background as a college professor. So when you go to college, you'll learn about different aspects of life. You'll learn about how to be a full-fledged adult, and you'll find some sort of topic that you're passionate about. Well, this is one of those topics that I'm passionate about: how you can use a country's culture and brand to help shape a relationship with other countries. One of my former colleagues, when I taught at Oklahoma State, her name was Dr. Fullerton, Dr. Jamie Fullerton, and she came up with this idea of the model of country concept. And essentially, it's an idea that says there's lots of things in the world, some of them we can control and some of them we can't, that help citizens form opinions about other countries. And so there's lots of people out there doing lots of research on public diplomacy and how countries relate to each other. But this is an idea behind that pretty much says that things like the people and the tourism and the culture and the exchanges that we have with each other influence how we view each other. So this is a kind of an idea I wanted to plant in your brains as we discussed how culture actually influences public diplomacy and foreign policy. So if you look at this a little bit more in depth, there's lots of influencing factors here. If you think about a country and you know that they just had a natural disaster, you're going to have those memories in your head, and you might have certain opinions about it. If you are thinking about the United States, you might think about our media or our cities, or New York City, DC. You all have different ideas about a country based off of what you've heard about the country, what you know about that country. So all of those factors can influence whether you think positively or negatively about a country. So let's go to the next slide for a minute. Taking that idea that all of these factors already exist, we already know things about different countries because of the people, because of the tourism that might happen. Here is a picture of New York City. You can see here that there's arts and media in this picture. There's technology, there's all sorts of things happening in this one image, but all of them kind of create a brand for the United States. So if you think about the people of a country, that's all part of that brand. Same for tourism. When people come to the United States, there's some sort of cultural exchange. It may be a good experience, it may be a bad experience. Hopefully it's a good one, right? But all of that kind of forms together to create an opinion. The United States, we have a very strong arts and media exchange program. Our sports are very popular. The technology, even the picture of the tornado, the Doppler radar system, that's part of the exchange of ideas, that technology. Some countries use the technology that we develop and we share that, and that's part of the cultural exchange in a way. And then all of that forms our reputation. Like if people like the United States, they will have a certain opinion. If they have a good image in their brain, they'll be more likely to want to learn more about it. All of this is in our day-to-day lives. The people that we engage with, the arts and media that we see, the sports that we watch, the technology that we use, whether we have an iPhone or if we have, any variety of different technology that might be developed in one country or another, that helps formulate how we think and feel about a country. So, since I work for the U.S. government and the State Department, we are very aware of this, and we try very hard to figure out ways to help people have good opinions about our country, as well as reinforce and strengthen the countries that we have relationships with. Ukraine is one such country. Let's go to the next slide. So there's a program. So the bureau that I work for specifically is the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs. So what we try to do is create exchanges, and we have programs that help us to strengthen mutual understanding and relationships as we move forward as with partner countries. So, for example, in Ukraine, we have educational exchanges, cultural exchanges, and visitor programs. Education USA is a great program if you want to learn about educational opportunities in the United States. If you're already a teacher or you're a grad student, maybe you want to look into Fulbright and come over to the United States and teach, or maybe a teacher from the United States might go to Ukraine and teach. We have summer work and travel programs. We have programs like FLEX, the Future Leaders Exchange Program, which we look for the best and the brightest, and we say, you know what, why don't you come to the US and you can learn about our culture? And sometimes we send people over as part of our exchange programs to your country so we can all understand what exactly makes us tick, what makes us really who we are and what we do. We also have music and sports exchanges. We do movie exchanges. We have IVLP. So if you are an entrepreneur and you want to go to the United States and learn more about our businesses and programs and develop a good network, we have that. We also have a program called Waitili, which is also a visitor exchange program that looks at entrepreneurs and businesses as well. There are hundreds of exchange programs within the Bureau, within ECA. And if you go to that website right there, exchanges.state.gov, you can learn all about them. There are tons of opportunities out there. If you want to go to the United States and get an education, Education USA is for you. If you want to just talk to, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to learn more about those kind of programs, IVLP or Waitili, that might be for you. Just go there. They have a website specifically for people who are not U.S. citizens, that they can figure out what kind of exchanges that they qualify for. But all of that is a way that we use cultural diplomacy in order to advance foreign policy. And I know that's kind of a little bit abstract, but the idea is by supporting other countries, creating a more prosperous, economically strong, free Ukraine, and democratic Ukraine can, by supporting these programs, it supports Ukraine. So next slide, please. And then specifically, my program, if you can't go to the United States, it's just not possible, we have a program called American Spaces. And essentially, these are America's cultural centers. Around the world, in 137 countries, we have these cultural centers, which many of you have seen or have visited, but we have 559 of them in 137 countries. And we use these American Spaces to promote democracy, to provide information about the US, to promote English language learning. So if you want to strengthen those English language skills before you go to the US, to get that college degree, you can do that in American space. We also make sure we try to stay engaged with our alumni. So if you've been to the United States as one of our programs or one of our grants, we can then say, hey, you know what? Why don't you come and speak at one of our American Spaces programs? Or we can tell you about education in the United States. We can help you build some really important life skills like coding. Some locations do coding, other locations do 3D printing, STEM learning. There are some really great programs that we have out there that are there to help you build entrepreneurial skills, job interview skills, all of these things so you can have a stronger community and a better life. And then, of course, we have strategic cultural programs, which are designed depending on a lot of situations. But that's what the American Spaces program is. It's really connecting people to the United States at the first point of contact. We're coming to you, and we're bringing the United States to you. Next slide, please. Oh, that's it. So that's kind of my thoughts on how we use culture within for foreign policy within the United States. It wasn't quite 20 to 30 minutes. It was only 10 to 15, but hopefully.
But I will still have a lot of questions for you if you allow, Cynthia.
Absolutely. Let's talk.
So let me let me start with the organizational thing, like householding. I see you guys sitting in a very nice hall. My best regards to you. Yeah, exactly. So that's what I want you to do. When you have a question, please just raise your hand, and I hope I will see you. Yeah. So having in mind that the key audience and the key guest audience are you, I will start actually from you. I will keep my questions to Cynthia on my table. So far so good, but I want to start with you. I have seen one lady in the second row. If you still have a question, please raise your hand. If not, yes, I see it. Go ahead. If you have a mic somewhere in the room, please. Yeah.
No, I can't.
It wasn't hand. Okay, it was just my wishful thinking.
Yeah, but please, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I see.
I don't remember if you know specifically. It's foreign affairs students from Lviv Polytechnic University in Lviv. Yeah, so that's why they are key audience, because they are your future colleagues, we hope.
Exactly. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah, exactly. And I really mean it, because we are looking for new minds every single day. So keep in mind this as well. Okay, go ahead. Your first question.
So, hi, Cynthia. Thank you so much for your presentation. It was so nice. So, I wanted to ask, as Ukraine also has its own brand as a country, from your just like side of view, is it successful? Is Ukrainian being popularized in the world correctly? And maybe you can recommend something, just like some events. I don't know, other things that will improve our showing of our country to the world?
Absolutely. Those are great questions. Well, first, I would say that I think Ukraine has a very good brand across the world. I know that across the United States, you have, I've never in my life seen so many Ukrainian flags, and like ever. I went home to Oklahoma, and everywhere I turned, there was a Ukrainian flag. In DC, there are Ukrainian flags. Like from sea to shining sea, everybody is all in on brand Ukraine. It's really fantastic. So I think there's a very strong brand, partially because of top of mind awareness, right? We're aware of what is happening, and in the United States, at least, we believe it. A lot of people, I think existentially, we believe in doing good and doing the right thing and standing up for democracy. And I think all across the United States, everyone sees that's what Ukraine is doing, and that's what matters in the long run, and that Ukrainians are strong and resolved and are doing the work and love democracy. And that's a really strong brand. I mean, from a brand perspective, I know that over time, right now it's about winning the war, and then the next step will be winning the future. And I know that in the long term, it's going to be a lot of hard work to get past the mental images that people have seen and experienced in Ukraine. And I think it's possible. It's just going to take time to rebuild, physically rebuild the country, emotionally and mentally rebuild the country, but it's totally possible. And then once it's done internally, it can be done externally. Like the thing with, if you think of a country as a brand, right? And you're all college students. So if you think of a country as a brand, you have to realize that if a brand doesn't have the structure internally, it can't externally execute, right? And so we're doing a lot of work right now. Ukraine is doing a lot of work. The United States is supporting Ukraine in every way we possibly can to sustain and build that. But I think in the future, one of the things that drives me crazy is how much I don't think people understand how awesome Ukraine is. Like, it is so beautiful, and the cities are wonderful, and the people are kind, and I want the rest of the world to see how awesome Ukraine is. And I know in time it will, but right now you guys are going through, if we're going to stick in the brand analogy, a lot of brand growth, and that's difficult. But we're here to support you in that. I hope that answered your question.
Thank you very much. It did for me, and I hope for the rest of the group as well. I have a follow-up question on that. And I have been thinking about like similar question when you talked about the natural disasters. We have sort of a disaster now, but this is called a war, right, in Ukraine. And I was wondering, we have already built the brand of brave nation, as we say, and that's what we communicate abroad. What are the factors of post-war brand building? That's what Ukraine and you have mentioned. Like, what are the things that you consider would be really nice to use in the future for Ukraine?
Well, post-war is not my expertise, but I do think pulling on your strengths, like we're going back to the principles of marketing, right? If you think of a SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you have to think of the strengths of Ukraine and the opportunities that lie out there. I mean, there's a lot of technological investment coming from Ukrainians. Y'all are very tech savvy, so you could put emphasis on that. You could look at what strengths that you do have and utilize those to help advance policies and positions. It's in anytime you have a brand, anytime you do anything, you also have to take that time to do that introspection. So with the SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, you also have to look internally, like what are our weaknesses as a country? What are the threats, aside from the actual threats, that we have to address so that we can change the way that our nation is seen, and we can look at it from a branding perspective. And granted, this is only from like a theoretical former college professor who is loves a good brand and loves a good theory.
Thank you, Cynthia. I will give a floor again to our guests. Does anyone have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, I'm Bojana, and as you know, I am just beginning to communicate with all of this strong words, lexic, and about and also with diplomacy sphere. So my question is, which, on your opinion, hard skills and soft skills we should develop in ourselves in order to become as successful as you are? Thank you.
That's a great question. Okay, so hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills, make sure you know how to sell yourself. It's kind of a combination of them both. Like, I feel like the hard skills and the soft skills, they work together. You need to be able to use Microsoft and be capable and skilled when it comes to the computer, but you also have that area of specialty that you're passionate about and that you know about, but also at the same time, you need to be open to the idea that you don't know everything. And I often tell myself I'm wrong at least twice a day. Because then that way, I'm not going to sit there and be like, I'm right. My way or the highway. Because if you know that you might be wrong, you're open to new ideas and perspectives. And that goes a long way. Also, be able to work with people, be able to listen. But for me, I think that one of the biggest things that you need to do is be more brave than afraid. There are a lot of scary things in this world. And you don't know where life is going to go. You don't know where life is going to take you. But if you were just a little bit more brave than afraid, and you can take that first step, you can do incredible things. And don't ever think that you have to have a certain thing by a certain time. Nobody at 18 is who they're going to be at 25, and nobody at 25 is who they're going to be at 45. And thank God for it, because who wants to be who you are now for the rest of your life? Be open to change and just be a little bit more brave than afraid, and life will have a lot of surprises for you.
I really liked your brave versus afraid comparison. I have a more political question. You started your presentation with mentioning democracy as something really valuable for the American nation and for the Ukrainian nation, as we proved at least last year, but also over the last 30 years. I was wondering, from your diplomat's perspective, where do you see the most challenging environments in where the democracy is being actually challenged, questions, and where the American nation, American diplomats, but also the Ukrainian diplomats and the nation should really focus on, or at least invest more attention to?
That's a hard question, but a good one. I think democracy struggles when we take it for granted. I think that democracy struggles when truth and misinformation when misinformation and disinformation is more powerful than truth. That's when democracy struggles. And what was the second part of your question? I'm sorry.
Like which part of the world or which part of the societies that we are trying to target are the most vulnerable for propaganda, for misinformation, and so on, where democracy is actually in the most threatened position now?
Okay, so I think media literacy is why it's important. People who don't understand and don't have the education and don't have the tools in their mind to realize when the media that is coming at them isn't necessarily truthful, and instead of seeking out new information or seeking out the truth, they just propagate that misinformation. And I think that's when democracy is most endangered, to be honest, because democracy starts with a single person, and it's an agreement between people that everyone has rights, certain inalienable rights. And when we take democracy for granted, when we don't allow ourselves to actively be part of it, that's when it weakens. That's when we start to lose it, when it loses its strength. And democracy is precious. We all have to be actively involved in the process.
Thank you. So actually it means we need to work everywhere non-stop. Yeah.
No rest for the weary. Yeah, that's the phrase.
It means, I think it actually makes sense indeed, because even though we used to have sort of strong democracies, right, and quite all democracies, we also see how even the Western European societies are vulnerable to misinformation and so on. And we in the Ukrainian Institute really see this, because at some point we in the Ukrainian Institute face or just hear the questions, do you really exist? Like, maybe Putin is right, the Ukrainian nation does not exist, or the Ukrainian language is actually not the language. It's something that we are facing still as the institute, but also as the nation, something that you need really to invest until it's utterly is solved. So I agree with you about the misinformation as something that really is deteriorating our all over the world. I will again give the floor to other. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Pleasure.
Presentation, as we admired you, and on the behalf of all the students and all the Ukrainians, we would like to thank you for, and all the American people, for your support, for your military aid, for your technical aid, for your understanding. We are really appreciated. Thank you from all our heart. And also, I would like to ask you a question, because I'm actually teaching my students public diplomacy, and I'm telling that the American public diplomacy is the strongest, best model. And what would you advise to our students, to us as scientists, as teachers? How should we act this wartime? How we should struggle as public diplomacy ambassadors, agents through the world or in our country to promote our country's agenda? Because soon people will be tired of war abroad. They will keep on living their life, and they will be a bit, not interested in our problems. So what should you advise to the youth, to us as teachers as well, how we shall act and help our country to support as well?
Sure. Well, first, it is an honor to serve my country and to assist yours. And the United States is very, we are standing firm with our Ukrainian friends and allies. And I think what's important to remember is everyone gets tired of messages at some point, even yourself when you're giving them. So what I would advise is, when you are exhausted, when you are at the point that you can't say it one more time, take a break and give yourself a little bit of a rest, so that you can give all that you have to what you're doing. I have found this year that if I don't give myself a break, if I'm just constantly working and going and fighting and doing and trying to make sure that this message gets out there, that I don't take time for self-care and rest, then I can't do as good of a job doing my job. So that's one thing I would advise. And the second thing is just believe in your message and be passionate for it, because people can see and hear the truth, and they can see and hear that passion, and they will remember it. They will recall it. They will fight for it. And it's both a marathon and a sprint, and you have to have that passion in order to get the message out there. And it's never going to stop. Like, we're all going to have to fight for democracy and freedom and what we believe in all of our lives, because that's who we are.
Yes, I totally agree. Sometimes we start the messages understanding that the impact and real change will come in 10 years' time or even 20-year time, even though it sounds terrific. It sounds really like long and horrible. But if you think about the perception and attitudes that will change really, that's what at least motivates me. But yes, it sounds very, very long distance.
And things will change. If you just have to have the passion behind it and the patience behind it. You can't expect everybody. You can't just go and say, you go change your life. You go change the world. Like, it takes time, and it takes time to change behavior. It takes time to change attitudes and knowledge. And we have to realize that. So we have to be as diligent as we possibly can be, and as consistent as we possibly can be in getting our messages out. And we have to continue to believe in those messages.
Exactly.
It's not easy, but it's worth it.
Exactly. Since it has been a professor that asked the question, I also give an opportunity for another student of yours. Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Cynthia. Thank you so much for your slides. I wanted to ask about democracy in Ukraine. What do you think? Is it really works here or not? And what would you like to improve or change?
It absolutely works in Ukraine. No, that's not a question. I have repeatedly told people Ukrainians love democracy and they're willing to fight for it, and it is amazing to watch. Democracy absolutely works in Ukraine, and it is it's I can't even think of what the second part of your question was. I'm sorry.
The second part was maybe of the areas of improvement.
Areas of improvement. Well, that's that is a good question. Areas of improvement. I think one of the things is that Ukraine has to make sure that, as it rebuilds, there's we have policies and practices in place that help ensure that democracy remains as without corruption. That is always a difficult thing to do. It's nice to say, but actually actualizing it is different. Decentralizing the government, incorporating NGOs and other aspects into policy and into civil society, making it be a collaborative process for everybody. I think that's really important for moving forward.
It has been historically proven that the war also puts challenges to democracy, because the war is another condition, and there is indeed a whole bunch of different talks, arguments, how we will preserve our democracy, and we should preserve, as Cynthia told it. So I absolutely share your opinion that there is democracy if you compare it with other countries, but it doesn't mean that it's in the best condition. And I think it's actually this conclusion refers to many countries all over the globe. So we need, if there is one conclusion that you will take from this talk of ours, is that indeed democracy and the popularizing and promoting national brand of democratic countries should be that it's never-ending story, improving your democracy.
I think there's a quote by, is it Thomas Jefferson maybe, that says, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty."
Perfect. Yeah.
And in my heart, I just want us all to be ever vigilant, because if we're ever vigilant to fight for and protect democracy, that means we have liberty.
Exactly. Yeah. So again, we have 5 minutes left. The organizers, Olga from America House Lviv, was very strict on the schedule, because I know that you guys have another talk today, so we'll not take your time. But again, before I have my concluding remarks, or Cynthia will have, please raise your hand if you have question. Yeah, I see. Student, hello.
Yes. Hello. Thank you very much for your presentation and your answers for our questions. My question will be a little, I don't know, similar to our teacher's question. I would like to ask if you can recommend us some public diplomacy projects which we can join, as we are starting our studying, and we want to help our country to make a positive image, and we just have a lot of variants and don't know which we need to choose and which will be better. So would you recommend us something? Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what's important is, what year are y'all? Are y'all freshmen, sophomores? Seniors, juniors?
Mostly freshmen.
Mostly freshmen. Okay. So I think right now a good place to start is just getting to know the space, right? Getting to know what's happening in public diplomacy. There are cultural institutes, like you're in a cultural institute, but there are cultural institutes from Germany and England, and I believe Denmark has them. You can look into cultural institutes. You can look into a variety of things, educational opportunities. You can look into the rates of people. You can look into the big problems that Ukraine has. I know that brain drain is a big issue, so you could dig into that idea of, if people do go and learn opportunities, how do we get them back into Ukraine so we can use their brilliance and help rebuild our country. There's lots of opportunities out there. You just have to start at the ground. You don't have to create world peace right now. We'll do that next week. But figure out what within public diplomacy is interesting to you and find one thing and just dig into that. I mean, there's a lot of internally displaced people that need help, and there's a lot of refugees that are in neighboring countries that need assistance and aid. There's a lot of opportunities out there for you that you can, if you just start thinking about what are the problems that we can help solve, that you can find information about.
Cynthia, if you allow me, and if the organizers allow me, I will also jump in to add my ideas about what you can benefit from. As freshmen, of course, you have many years ahead to learn. What is something that is important, I believe, is for you to know the global politics, but also for Ukraine to know the regional politics of specific continents, if I may say so, or just regions. Let's call them region. African regional politics, Southeast Asia, or Latin America. There is something that we need to explore more as Ukrainian diplomats, and maybe you have heard or watched the interviews of our minister, of other people that work for the system, is that we need to go to the world, not only to the European and Euro-Atlantic communities, but also to get to know how the globe in general works. And more practically, again, the Ukrainian Institute is here to help you. We are really looking for students for internships, but also for young people, talented people to be hired to. Besides that, I get not fatigued to recall one sentence to Ukrainians. Every single Ukrainian that goes abroad is a diplomat, above all a cultural diplomat. So you can actually train yourself while being in Poland, in Germany, and everywhere in the world, wherever you are. And the last, again, more practical thing is that, as you know, the Ukrainian state has applied to European membership status. It will take years. Maybe it will take the whole period of your studies, maybe more, and specialists say more. But I still keep being positive about that, because this is only the start for you as future diplomats, as future public diplomacy specialists, because it's a huge and very profound process that Ukraine will go through. The European integration, the integration of all the sphere, and do not think only about the politics. Think about cultural sphere, innovation, technology sphere. Every single business, you will have to think and to provide the knowledge to your employer or anybody else about how Ukraine will be integrated in the European with the European Union above all, but also with the whole world. Because the globe is really big. Think about that, but again, do not forget. I really like the question about hard and soft skills. Hard skills at your at your year of studies is as important as soft skill. Thank you for allowing me to jump in with my thoughts. Again, maybe another question from the audience, and I think, to be honest, it will be the last one. So if you were holding back your question, this is the last minute, the last opportunity.
So another one question for me. So can you please tell us how American use influences public diplomacy, and if there are good examples that we can take and follow?
Wow, that's a hard question. American youth influence public diplomacy. I think we all, in some way, influence public diplomacy. If you think about youth on social media, they have followers around the world, right? And if you can get truth out there, or speak truth to power, that is one way that you can influence the world around you. It's not everybody's going to be aware and have the ability to do speak truth to power. I think the generation that's coming up right now are so on fire for fixing this world, and I love to see it. And I don't want anyone who's young to be discouraged to not do something because they don't think that they have the power or don't think that they have the skill set, because you do. Greta Thunberg, she's completely revolutionizing how we see environmental issues. So you just going back to it, you just have to have that passion for it. Find the thing that ignites the fire in your soul and fight for it. Because you can make change in this world, and it may be something small, it may be something just minor, and it may not be world peace. Again, we're going to do that next week, world peace. But find that thing that you can change, and focus on that one thing and make it your passion project. Because you can do big things.
Colleagues and guests, I don't think we would find any better ending for this meeting than this phrase and this motivation. And I take it for myself as well. Peace indeed next week, but something that motivates you. And I'm talking not only about the students, but also I see fabulous teachers, professors that sitting in the first row. And my best regards and really big thanks for your teaching work, because this is something and somewhere where really this spark begins and where people start really doing and changing the world. Thank you for that.
Yeah, that was always my favorite part of teaching, was seeing the sparks in students' eyes and knowing that you made a difference in their life.
Exactly. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, ladies and colleagues in the audience. I think I can now give a floor to organizers, or we call it a meeting. I'm not sure about the ending. That's what we didn't clarify with it. Yeah, maybe somebody from the room, an organizer, would tell us what to do now.
Yeah, we will just turn on music and say everybody thank you and goodbye, and have a nice evening and a peaceful week.
Thank you. Thank you. The best for you too. Thank you, Cynthia.
Bye-bye.
Bye.